Hello everyone. Let us today talk about the pulse code modulation, differential pulse code modulation, delta modulation, and adaptive delta modulation. In this lecture, I will start with non-uniform quantizer because I have already covered the process of quantization, sampling, and even the concept of uniform quantizer. Now, a non-uniform quantizer can be designed using a uniform quantizer. Along the x-axis is the uniform quantization levels I am showing. Along the y-axis are the non-uniform quantization levels. Non-uniform quantization levels means the step size is varying along y-axis, right? Now, why a non-uniform quantizer is required? Actually, in many practical sources, the probability density function of values is very high in certain regions and it is low in certain regions. Now, this causes a problem because it will decrease the dynamic range of the quantizer. Now, the example is the speech signal, which is more likely to take small values than high values. But if we have divided the whole range with the uniform step size, so the step size, the quantization levels, which are for higher values of the signal, they will be underutilized. In that case, they will actually affect the dynamic range of the quantizer. So, therefore, there is a requirement of a non-uniform quantizer, meaning by the step size is smaller where the values of the signal are more prominently occurring, rather the frequency of occurrence of those values is high. So we will keep the step size small there, and the values which are less likely to occur, so we will keep the step size larger there, right? Now, therefore, quantize using smaller step size in high probability regions and with bigger step size in low probability region. So this will effectively minimize the mean squared error. So that's what I was trying to explain, the application of the non-uniform quantizer. Therefore, a smaller step size in high probability region is desired. Now, this is the example of how the non-uniform quantizer can be designed. So, along as I was trying to explain the graphical axis in my previous slide, along the x-axis are the quantization levels for a uniform quantizer. Along the y-axis are the quantization levels of a non-uniform quantizer. So, these non-uniform non-uniform quantization levels can be achieved using a nonlinear device that I will explain in my next slide. So what we will do is we will try to compress the higher values of the signal. We will try to compress and try to bring the signal within the range where the step size is uh, more appropriate. That means by doing the compressing of the high valued signals at this first quadrant actually it shows the characteristics in the transmit on the transmitter side where the high valued signals are compressed so that the all the values of the signal can be brought within the range in which we are in which we have divided this in which we have made these quantization levels. So that means if you will compress, that means the range of values of the signal will be more occupied with smaller step sizes so that ultimately the quantization noise can be reduced. So first quadrant shows what happens at the transmitter side and the third quadrant shows what happens in reverse at the receiver side. So at the transmitter side we are compressing the signal, at the receiver side we are actually expanding the signal. So whatever is done at the transmitter side, we will do just the reverse of the whatever we have done at the transmitter side. We will do just the reverse. So at the receiver side, we are actually expanding. At the transmitter side, we are actually compressing the high valued signals. And this process, so this first quadrant shows the characteristics of a compressor. The third quadrant shows the characteristics of an expander. Both the compressor and the expander together, they are together, this process will be called as the compending. So compending is a process in which the compression is done at the transmitter side of high values of the signal, and the expansion is done of the signal at the receiver end. So this process of expansion and compression is known as compending. Right. So this is just the glimpse of what these axes look like. So axes look like, the x-axis is the uniform quantizer and the y-axis is the non-uniform quantizer. So how we will be able to design a non-uniform quantizer, that I will discuss in the next slide. So quantize in such a way that corresponding uniform quantizer levels are represented by its non-uniform quantizer counterpart. So that means what is the meaning of this line? That means this first level will actually correspond to the first level along the uniform quantizer will actually correspond to the first level of the non-uniform quantizer. The second level of the uniform quantizer will actually correspond to the second level of the non-uniform quantizer. So you have to design your non-uniform quantizer in such a way so that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the quantization levels of the uniform quantizer and the non-uniform quantizer. So let us see how the non-uniform quantizer can be designed. So to design the non-uniform quantizer, we will take a nonlinear device. We will pass the input samples from the nonlinear device and we will then pass it through a uniform quantizer. And Y is the output, that means non-uniform quantized output. So a non-uniform quantizer compresses high values of the signal. At the receiver, it performs the reverse operation as I have just explained. But quantization noise will be there, of course, present. But by using a non-uniform quantizer, what will happen? We are improving the dynamic range of the quantizer as a whole. So this is just the same explanation. This is the first quadrant that I showed here. It actually doing the compressor is actually the compressor, so which is done at the transmitter side, and the reverse operation is done at the receiver. So this is expander. So compressor and expander together will be called as the compender, or the process is called as the compending. Now mostly compressors. This is a very important point actually. Mostly compressors used are logarithmic type of compressors, because there are two types of compending laws which exist. I will come to that part in my next slide. One is the mu law and the other is the A law. So both the compressors are actually logarithmic compressors, meaning by the functions that we use to compress the signals and to expand the signal are logarithmic in nature. Now, why there is a reason that why the compressors and the expanders and thereby the process of compending uses logarithmic type of functions. Now, there is a reason for that, because the reason that I will try to explain is regarding the speech signals, because our human ear is an engineering marvel and human ear has a logarithmic response. Now, it has the ability to become more or less sensitive to sounds. There can be different types of sounds, and our ear can be sensitive to those sounds. Meaning by it can hear 0 dB of sound, which may be a whisper, up to 120 dB of sound, which can be a very loud and a painful music during a rock concert. However, so our noise, our ear can hear all these sounds, but the dynamic range of the ear is only 40 dB at a particular sound level. So this means that you can hear someone whisper and enjoy a rock concert with same ears at the same time. So that is not possible. So that, therefore, depending on the behavior of the human ear as a sensor, as a sensory organ, since the behavior is logarithmic in nature, so therefore the compressors and the expanders that we design for speech signals, and thereby it can be extended to other type of signals also, particularly for speech signals. the compressors and the expanders that we design are logarithmic in nature. And there are two types of laws which are prevalent. One is mu law and the other is A law. Mu law is basically used for USA and Canada, and whereas A law is for Europe. Now, for a given input x, the equation for mu law. So this is the equation of the mu law. The x varies from -1 to 1, where mu is equal to mu is a parameter that actually defines the amount of compression. Mu is equal to 255, which is used in North America and Japan, just to quote as an example. And the range of this function is -1 to 1. And this function f inverse of y, this is the inverse of the compressor. That means this is for expansion. And similarly, there is an A law also. There is a similar kind of function, but just with some variation depending on the particular terrain in which for which the laws are developed. A law is basically developed for Europe, and A is a factor which is synonymous to mu, which determines the amount of compression or expansion. So A equal to 87.6 and is known as the compression parameter. And similarly, there is an equation for the A law expansion also. Now, I will explain about the mu law. So similarly, similar explanation can be applied to A law also. So in case of a mu law, along the x-axis is the input signal, which is x, and we are plotting with the normalized values of y and x to be 1. So when mu is equal to 0, it's a straight line. So that means it's a uniform quantizer. No compression is there. When mu is equal to 10, the certain amount of compression is there. As mu increases, the amount of compression also increases. So this characteristics will be the characteristics of the A law will be similar in the characteristics in A law will be similar to to how the characteristics are explained in the mu law. Right. So both types of compounding laws are similar to each other, trying to achieve the same kind of goal. Now, this way of coding in which quantization is done, so actually we are taking our discussion to pulse code modulation. So what is pulse code modulation? In which the sampling is done, then quantization is done, and then levels are allocated to the particular sample values. So then levels are represented by suitable number of bits ultimately. So once we have divided the whole range into quantization levels, every level will be allocated one code, which will be in terms of the binary bits, right? So every level, every quantization level will be having a separate code. It will be represented by a separate. It will be represented by suitable number of bits. Now, this process of coding in which quantization is done, and then levels are represented by suitable number of bits, is called pulse code modulation. Each sample is coded. So how the coding will be done? Each sample value will be allocated a level depending on where the sample value falls, right? That I have already explained in my previous lectures. Each sample is coded independent of the other samples, right? So a quantization level will be associated with the sample value, and since the quantization level is coded, so therefore a particular code will be allocated to that sample, and this process of coding is known as pulse code modulation. Now, there are schemes in which the coding of the current sample. Now, in case of PCM, the coding of samples, coding of one sample is independent of the coding of the other sample. So there is no correlation in the coding process for two different samples. Normally, you can represent a sample using 8 bits or 4 bits or 12 bits, right? But there are schemes in which the coding of the current sample depends on the previous sample too. And one such coding process is called the differential pulse code modulation. Now, the absolute value of the sample is not coded in case of DPCM. Whereas in case of PCM, we actually code the absolute value of the sample and we allocate a code. But in case of differential pulse code modulation, just to save the bandwidth, what we will do is that we will not code the absolute value of the sample, rather the difference between the sample values is coded. So difference between consecutive sample values will be coded rather than the absolute value of the sample. Now in DPCM, the difference between the sample values are encoded using finite number of bits. DPCM works on the principle of prediction. We will try to, because we have to actually subtract the we have to take the difference of the incoming input sample and the and what we will do is we will try to predict the incoming sample based on the previous data available. So DPCM works on the principle of prediction. The value of the present sample is predicted from the previous samples, and the prediction may not be correct, but it is close to the actual value. So we will try to predict the sample value which is incoming. So we will try to take the difference of the predicted sample value and the incoming sample value, and that will be represented by an error, and that error will be error which is actually the difference between the two incoming sample value and the predicted sample value, and that error will be coded. That is explained here in this diagram, in this block diagram. So xn here in the argument n and ts is there, where ts is the sampling period, and is just that we are taking the sampled version of the input data. So nts is the sampled input, ents is the error. We are using a quantizer here, right? So what we will do is that we will, based on the previous data available, what we will try to do is that we will try to predict the present sample, and we will then subtract the present sample from the incoming sample, and that will be termed as the error, and that error will be quantized then and then encoded, and that will form the DPCM signal. Right, so this is in the case of a transmitter. Now in the case of a receiver, what we will do, we will just try to reverse the process. The input to the decoder will be a DPCM input. So whatever the DPCM signal that we receive will be applied to the decoder input, and then this process of prediction filter, the output being predicted, output will be fed to the prediction filter, and then we will try to sum up here, and we will try to produce the output. So this is the DPCM receiver, and this is the DPCM transmitter. The advantage of the DPCM is that we are using lesser number of because we are taking the difference. So we can have the occupancy of the difference signal in a shorter range. I mean, we will divide the whole range into levels, since the range will be smaller, because we are concentrating on a difference. So once the range is smaller, we can divide the whole range into lesser number of quantization levels. So lesser number of bits will be required to code the difference rather than the absolute value of the sample. So that is the advantage of DPCM over the PCM. Now another special case of DPCM is that what we call as the delta modulation. Now in delta modulation, only one bit will be used for encoding per sample. Now how that process will be achieved, let us try to understand delta modulation in detail. Let's say this sinusoid is shown as a signal, the input signal, and we will take the sample values with certain sample period, right? So, and we will associate quantization levels with these sample values, and then we need to code. Now, how the coding will be done? So, transmitter initializes at 0. So, it initializes at 0 as in DPCM. In DPCM also, once you are trying to take the difference between the incoming data and the predicted data, so it will initialize from 0 value, and then it will try to predict. As the sample will start coming, it will initialize to the memory in the DPCM transmitter is initialized to 0. So once the samples will start coming, it will try to take the difference starting from the 0 as the initial value. So same will happen in the case of delta modulation also. Transmitter initializes at 0 as in DPCM. Now if the sample value, so whatever the sample value is coming, if the sample value is greater than 0, right, if the sample value is greater than 0, it transmits 1 with fixed step size, which is delta. So receiver will receive 1 and receiver will assume that the sample value is delta, right. Had it received 0, then it would have assumed the sample value to be minus delta. Actually, this is the value that has to be incremented or decremented with the accumulated value in the memory. I will try to explain this point in my next slide. Now, as the process starts and moves further, the value of the this value will be accumulated in the memory, right. So if let me explain here. Now if the value in the memory, so let's start from 0. So once the memory has 0 and a sample comes, if the sample value is greater than 0, it will store delta in memory, and if the value is less than 0, it will store minus delta in memory. Now the next sample comes. When the next sample comes, whatever is there in the memory will be subtracted from the sample value. Now if it is greater than 0, again a delta increment will be done in the memory value, and if the difference between the memory and the incoming sample is less than 0, then a decrement of delta will be done in the memory value, right. Now it will store the accumulated, so memory will always have the a value, accumulated value, which is actually trying to track the signal, that how the signal is varying. The accumulated value in the memory will try to track that signal as the signal moves further. As the signal, as the signal follows and starts keeps coming, so this accumulated value will try to track that. Now both transmitter and receiver will store the values, the accumulated values, to keep track of the signal. Now, if value is less than value in memory, it will be if the value of the present sample is less than the value in memory, it will transmit 0. In memory it increases or decreases the accumulated value by upon either 1 or 0. If it will in memory it increases or decreases the accumulated values depending upon either 1 or 0 is received. That means when a 1 will be transmitted, when the sample value comes, the sample value is compared with the value in the memory. Now if the sample value is more than the value in the memory, it will transmit plus delta, it will transmit 1. When the sample value is less than the accumulated value in the memory, it will transmit 0. So when 1 is transmitted, the overall accumulated value is incremented by delta, and when 0 is transmitted, the overall accumulated value will be decremented by delta, right. So that the accumulated value should follow the sample values that are coming. Now because signal changes fast, now what will happen is that signal changes faster than tracking speed of the step size. It is not able to track it fully. This is a drawback. This is a drawback of delta modulation. Now if the signal changes very fast as compared to the value in the memory, then what will happen, we have to increment or decrement the memory value by a fixed step size, which is delta, right. So if the signal is going has a positive slope, so that means we have to increment the memory value. But if the signal is traveling, if the signal is changing very fast, the value of the signal is changing very fast, in that case what will happen, since the accumulation in the memory has to be updated by a fixed step size, which is delta, so it may happen as the signal is changing very fast, the value in the memory may not be able to track that change in the signal. All right. Now, therefore, delta modulation is useful only when there is a high correlation between sample values. That means there is the sample values or the signal is not changing very fast. There is a high correlation between the sample values. Then delta modulation is very useful. But if there is the correlation is very less, that means the signal is changing very fast. In that case, it will be difficult in the case of delta modulation to track the signal or the sample values. So now this sinusoid drawn in this diagram actually is the signal, and the staircase voltage is the value present in the memory, which is trying to track the signal. Now there are two cases shown in this diagram. One is when the signal is almost constant, I mean changing very slowly, and the other case is when the signal is changing very fast. Now what happens? Our memory in the delta modulation, in case of delta modulation, that means the delta modulator is trying to for example, let us take the case of fast changing signal first. So this is so there is a certain value which is present in the memory, but the signal has changed very fast. So updation in the memory will happen only with a fixed step size, right? So it is trying to track the value in the memory is trying to track the signal, but the signal is changing very fast. So it may not. It can happen that the staircase voltage, which is actually the representation of how the updation of values is taking place in the memory, is not actually keeping track of the signal. So signal is changing very fast, but our voltage, our staircase voltage is trying to track that signal, but there is a distortion. So this is very high distortion, and this type of distortion or error, we call it as the slope overload error or distortion. Right. There is another type of noise present in the so this is slope overload error or distortion or noise, right? There is another type of noise which is present in the case of delta modulation, which is known as granular noise. Now when the signal is almost constant here, what will happen? Because there is a value in the memory, now the signal is constant. So if the signal value is more than the memory, if the sample value is more than the value in the memory, it will update the memory in the value by delta. So delta value goes up. In this case, the value in the memory is more. Now the next sample comes. The sample value is now less than the value in the memory. So memory value will be updated by minus delta. So it will keep toggling. If the signal is not changing very fast, and if the signal is almost a constant, the value of the memory will keep toggling. The waveform will keep toggling here, right? Quantizer keeps toggling. So this type of noise is known as the granular noise. So granular noise when slope of the signal is almost constant. Now to decrease granular noise, how to decrease granular noise? What we have to do is decrease the step size. Decrease the step size means bring the quantization levels closer, so that the toggling of the voltage levels is smaller. If the step size is smaller, so we can reduce the granular noise. But in the second case, slope overload, we have to increase the step size. Because if we keep the step size same, right, it is not keeping track of the signal. How can we reduce this distortion? We can, if we increase the step size, right, in that case the memory in the value in the memory will be able to keep track of the signal. So there are two conflicting design issues are there. One is, if you want to reduce the granular noise, decrease the step size. If you want to decrease the slope overload error, increase the step size. So this is a contradictory situation or conflicting situation. Now what is the solution to this? The solution is adaptive delta modulation. In adaptive delta modulation, nth step size is taken as a function of the previous step size and present signal value and also value in memory. That means we will be having a variable kind of step size depending on how the signal is varying. We will see that. Now let us talk about the delta modulator and let us try to do some analytical let us try to do the analysis of this delta modulator and through this block diagram. Now delta modulator DM comprises of a 1-bit quantizer. So it's a 1-bit quantizer, very advantageous as far as the bandwidth requirements are concerned, and it also consists of a delay circuit. Let us see that. So this is the sampled value in sampled input. So we will try to this is the 1-bit quantizer, right? So this is the equalized, not the equalized, the quantized output, which is we call as the VNTS also, and this is summed up here with the this is delayed here. The 1-bit quantizer value is delayed here with this delay element, and we will try to estimate the XNTS. Now XNTS will be subtracted from the incoming sample. We will to generate an error, right? But that error that means we will see only here that whether this value is greater than this value or not. So if it is greater than, it will be 1. It will be quantized to 1. If it is smaller, it will be quantized to if it is smaller, then it will be quantized to 0. Right. So this part is the accumulator part. Now let us try to do some mathematical analysis. Say I have given the notations also. This XNTS is a sampled input. EPNTS is a summer output or the quantizer input. So EP is the quantizer input. EQ is the quantizer output. X hat NTS is the output of the delay circuit, and UNTS, this UNTS is the input of the delay circuit. So this EP will be equal to, now what is EP? EP is equal to X minus X hat. So EP is equal to X minus X hat. Now what is X hat? X hat is the delayed version of this U. So what we have done is XNTS minus UN minus 1, delayed version of U. So what is, if we look at what is U, U is actually the sum of X hat and EQ or V. So that we will put here. It is X hat because UN is equal to U is equal to X hat. So but here at the input it is coming U of n minus 1. That means the delayed version. So X hat will be actually delayed version of U. So X hat will be delayed, and since if we X hat is delayed version, and once we try to sum up here, U, because in the expression, if you see the expression is minus UN minus 1. So corresponding to this, what is UN? UN is equal to X hat plus EQ. But what is UN minus 1? It will be X hat of UN minus 1 and Vn minus 1. Right. Now further, this V, what is V? V equal to, let us see what is V. V equal to EQ/NTS, as is there EQ/NTS, and this is given by, this is the quantizer, this is the equation for the quantizer, that this depending upon the sign of the signal EP, we will say it is 1 or 0, right? It is 1 or 0. I mean, in the, since it is 1 or 0, so 1 can be represented as plus 1, or 0 can be represented as minus 1. Clear? So that is why this mathematically speaking, 0 is minus 1 and 1 is corresponding to 1. So UNTS will be equal to, so what is UNTS? UNTS is equal to, of course, X hat plus EQ. So hence UTS will be equal to UNTI minus 1. So what is UN? It will be equal to, let us see here, UN of UN minus 1 of TS plus VNTS. let's see this diagram. So UTUN is equal to x hat n minus 1 and Vn, right? So this is the whole diagram, and if you do the analysis here, assuming zero conditions, this u will be equal to if you use this function here that I just described, it will be j equal to, so this is actually giving the accumulator value. The value is being accumulated here, right, depending on what is coming as the input, whether there has to be a change of delta or whether there has to be a change of minus delta. So that value will be accumulated in the accumulator, and this is how the accumulated version of the delta modulator output. And this is the, so x hat is actually the accumulated version of the accumulated version, as I was trying to say, in the memory, which is x hat, and this value in the memory, which is accumulated, actually will be used to compare to be compared with the sample coming from sample coming as input, right? So this is the block diagram of the delta modulator, and I have done the mathematical analysis also, where it shows that the accumulated value is there, which is in the memory, and the input sample value will be compared, and depending on whether there is an increase or decrease, the one bit quantizer will be used. So it will give either 1 or 0. It will give either 1 or minus 1 to represent 1 or 0 in binary. So in the case of delta demodulator also, we will use the, because this is my DP, this is my delta modulator signal, which is V. So this signal is applied to the sorry, yeah. So this signal is applied to the demodulator. So demodulator, so we are using a low pass filter here. So why the low pass filter is used? A binary sequence is given as input to the demodulator. The staircase approximated output is given to low pass filter. Low pass filter is used for noise elimination. For out of band signals, granular noise is eliminated here. Now, as I said, if the slope overload is, let me come to that slide where I discuss. Yes, to decrease the granular noise, we have to decrease the step size. To decrease the slope overload error, we have to increase the step size. So these are two conflicting situations. How this situation can be avoided, and the solution that I discussed was adaptive delta modulation. In the case of adaptive delta modulation, we will change the step size. Excuse me, we will change the step size depending on whether the signal is varying fast or it is almost constant. That means it is not varying. So we will decide the step size accordingly. Now, who will decide the step size? So we will use some intelligent device to decide upon the step size. So this is the modulator of this is the delta modulator, right? So one bit quantizer, I have already explained this delta modulator just now, and this is one bit quantizer. Now here there is a logic for step size control. So this can be some kind of sophisticated electronic device, maybe a DSP chip or any VLSI customized IC, maybe an FPGA or a very powerful microprocessor, or even an ASIC also. So this device can be used to control the step size depending on the variation of the input signal. Rest of the diagram will remain the same. So this is adaptive delta modulation. Now this is how the incoming signal is digitally coded using pulse code modulation. It can be differential pulse code modulation, delta modulation, and adaptive delta modulation. So I end my lecture here. Thank you. Now,